How are you doing?
I think I'm good.
I was going to say, make sure you sit there.
You doing all right? I'm doing pretty good. Yourself? Good, good.
Move along, man.
I'm not ignoring it. It's just like, I went to his assistant, and he's like, we got nothing. I'm like, well, yeah, we got it.
I appreciate it. I'm happy to
What are you doing, man? Not much. I didn't see anything in I'll send you an email. Yeah, I'll bring her.
You don't know.
Yeah. Thank you.
So like I was expecting stuff by some people say I mean, you'll like it. You'll like it. I mean, those are rude.
There's a few people who are just genuinely interested, but not as many as you are.
Where's the gavel? No gavel?
We're gonna knock our head.
All right, hey everyone, I think we're going to get started. So thank you all for being with us this afternoon. I'm just getting started. So thanks everyone for being with us, and we're excited to have a joint meeting of the Asheville City Council and the Buncombe County Commission. It's something that we've done a number of times over the years, but it's been a while, so we thought it would be great to get together and have some updates on some of the projects that we're working on together and some of the collaborations, and have some discussion about some of the issues that are of mutual concern to both the city and the county. So I just want to welcome everyone here today, and would you like to? Well, we were talking about how to kind of start this, and I know a lot of folks here know each other, but we do have some new faces on our county commission in particular from the just recent election. So we were going to suggest that we go around and everyone just briefly introduce yourself and tell us about one of your pets. One, just if you have multiple.
Ellen, just one.
Just one.
Really? I can pick up the whole.
But if you would like to,
That's the way you said that.
Yeah, we had to limit it.
Right.
just share some information about.
And if you don't have a pet, then we know that about you.
That's right. So,
What exactly?
And no judgment.
So since I asked this, I'll kick it off. So we are a house of cats and dogs, and we have way too many cats in particular. But we also have a beloved dog whose name is Boomer.
And who are you?
And my name is Brownie. I'm the chair of the county commission, but still have fond memories of serving on the Asheville City Council. Thanks, everyone.
I'm Esther Manheimer, Mayor of Asheville, and have the fond memory of serving with you on the Asheville City Council. And we don't have cats because we have two totally allergic people in our house. But we do have a dog, Sochi, who was adopted from the Humane Society, and Jamie actually found him online before I went to do a tour there.
Oh.
Robert Presley, District 3. I have a, wait a minute, talking about animals. I have a cat named Alice. So,
How old is Alice?
Don't all race car drivers have a cat named Alice?
well, I had one named Elvis and Priscilla, but they was run off. But she's 7 years old.
Oh.
She was stray in the woods. We got her when she was 7 months old, or 7 weeks old. And when Elvis left, we said there'd never be another cat in the house. And
That didn't last.
no, that's the new boss there.
I like
Never
it
get when Elvis left the building.
My name is Julie Mayfield. I'm on Asheville City Council. We have two cats. They are brother and sister. They were rescues when they were just little bitty. Started off fostering them, but we all know how that goes, right? And the one in particular that I will mention is Maddie. She's a little black cat, and she's a talker, and she is named after Madeleine Albright because she is a fearless little woman. She's 13.
You have a cat named.
Okay, so she's 13 years old. So let's just go back 13 years.
Okay.
Do you call her Madeline Albright?
No, I call her Maddie.
You don't put any pins on it.
You want to talk about Joe?
Okay, good, so,
Did you call her cat?
no. Joe Belcher, County Commissioner, District 3. I do have, went through a series of pets, had put down a cat recently, and I have a dog named Jake. And he's a good dog, he's a lab. And he was a replacement for a dog that we had before, Isaac, which we could never replace, but I really wasn't going to tell you about my dog, I was going to tell you about my grandchildren. I know, but let's see, I have the floor. So. I have two new grandchildren. One's granddaughter is a year, she's Joy. And the other is my new grandson, who's a little over a year. He was adopted during birth, during the, from the mother, very sweet, sweet child, a 10-year-old. And so, and they get to play Jack. So.
Bring it all together.
I'm Ellen Cross, the vice chair of the commission, and
She hates animals.
I hate animals, and they range in weight from 1,350 pounds to 8. So you could ask about anyone, or we could just move on to one.
Give us your funny name, your funniest name.
Well, I'll tell you about Bentley. Bentley came from Asheville, Maine. He was, he arrived because the sheriff's department had to raid a puppy mill in Candler. And
No, it's not your fault. Just had to add that,
just saying where it came from.
Get on that show.
And this was many years ago, but he was at Asheville, Maine, and he completely shut down, so he came to Pet and Biscuit to move on to another home, and he ended up staying. He weighs all of 8 pounds, and he goes out with the horses with me. And there'll be video and pictures later if you want to see that.
There was a crazy cat from Swannanoa in my neighborhood.
Okay, I need to switch places.
Good.
Yeah, all the time.
We don't know which one is funnier.
Gordon.
Gordon Smith, Asheville City Council. I've got a new puppy, Lucy. She's a golden mix that we just got at Memorial Day. She just turned a year old. Well, it's on the 10th, so she hasn't quite turned a year old yet. And we've got a big old yellow lab mix that's about to be 15 years
Oh,
old.
God.
His name is Simon.
My cat is named Simon, and I have a horse named Simon.
Two can say
Oh, I'm Al Whiteside, County Commission, District 1. We decided a number of years ago, once our daughters grew up, my wife and I are too busy. We just don't have time for pets, I'll be honest with you. But we do have 2 grandsons who live next door. And they bring everything from St. Jude over. We do see a lot there.
Mike Fryer, County Commissioner. I have 3 dogs. 1 grand dog, he's 10, he's a lab. Then I've got a long-haired Dobson Hound mix that we got at Brother Wolf. Then we've got, that his name's Macy. One's Noble, one's Macy. Then we have Silky, which I've had a little trouble with, I'll tell you. She is a terrier.
Goes with it.
She's a hellion, is what she is. She runs the show around the house. And, but I thought when you got older, you were supposed to do like Al did, we went nuts. So we've got 3 dogs, and we enjoy them. Truthfully, they're a pain in the way, but so the kids for a while too. But I'm nuts.
I'm Jasmine Beach Ferrara, County Commissioner from District 1. This is actually a hot topic in our house right now. My wife and I are trying to avoid getting a dog just a second because it would make life a little too crazy. But we're dog lovers. We had to put our dog down about a year or so ago. So right now, the biggest pet in our house is a stuffed animal from Ingalls called Big Dog that our 2-year-old son is enamored with, and is about 6 feet long, and you'll see him if you go to Ingalls, the type of dog, and Big Dog goes most places Calvin goes. So that's our pet right now.
Cecil Lockwell, City Council. I have a dog and 3 cats, and the largest of the 4 is an orange cat. He's about a 17-pounder now, named Chomsky.
I love these names, it's so telling.
How old is Chauncey?
Chauncey is right on 13 years old now.
17 pounds, wow.
Okay. I'm Gwen Whistler, City Council. We do not have any pets. We had 2 cats that died about 4 years ago, and the deal was, if we were going to remain married, we will not replace this cat.
So you chose
sort
me
of,
instead.
I chose my husband instead. I think I made the right choice.
I think so.
My name is Brian Haynes, City Council. Excuse me. I have a dog named Iris, which is a mixed breed rescue. And I too would like to talk about my grandson. One Saturday and brightens every day for me.
Say that again, he was
He'll be 1 Saturday.
1 Saturday.
nice.
Nice.
Keith Young, Asheville City Council. I don't have any grandchildren, but, and I don't own any pets right now, but I did once, when I was younger, we had 2 pets. The first was a mixed white lab named Kiki, and when Kiki left, she had puppies and we had another one, Snowball. And so we had that all the way up until I was in high school. And so, but I haven't owned a dog or a cat since. Never owned a cat, but haven't owned a dog since.
So I see 3 potentials here, that's all I see.
All right, so, I don't know how many people got an agenda. Oh, here it is. And so this, Brownie said some introductions, and I'll just add to that. And then after that, we're going to hear from our respective managers and from the assistant managers, and then talk about some initiatives that we're doing together. We're going to talk about the Energy Innovation Task Force and the East Asheville Library and the African American Heritage Commission. We're not covering everything because we just don't have that much time. We're trying to start looking at, and what on the city side, what we'd be interested in looking at are some transit-related issues where we might have some possibilities for bus route extensions, where we are seeing some demand, and we would invite the opportunity to talk to the county about something like that. And also streamlining our housing initiatives. We have a lot we're both doing on affordable housing and trying to better coordinate those efforts so we kind of know what everyone's doing and where we have opportunities to partner. So we're not touching on those today, but just know that those are some possible things that we can work on together.
And I guess maybe just a quick other housekeeping item. This is these are official meetings of the City Council and County Commission. We're not expected to vote on any matters tonight, but the minutes are being taken. And each of us, I think, will vote to approve the minutes at the next meeting. But we're not expecting to vote on any issues tonight. And so just wanted to clear up the kind of procedural process we're planning to do. So nothing else, why don't we invite our county manager, Dr. Wanda Green, to come forward and share some information with us about partnerships and collaborations, and then we'll welcome Gary Jackson to follow, or are you guys doing this together?
Okay. We're both available for questions.
However you would like to proceed.
Well, thank you all for being here. It's been a while since we've had a joint meeting. You often get asked, what does the county and city do together? Well, we do a lot of things together. So I just wanted to hit 3 or 4 highlights in front of you, or handed out today. You have a list of those projects. I thought just first on public safety, that's where we have a lot of partnerships. Public safety training facility, very popular facility with both the sheriff and police and fire. We have a consolidated dispatch center where they all are co-located. They still report to the different organizations. We have a criminal justice information system. It's one of the things that I'm happiest about because it helps keep our officers safe. If they get a call, we know everything. They can know everything there is to know about what's happened with that residence before they know that back up, and then we get them actually delivered to the detention center if that's where they end up. We use the appropriate resources and talents to get them booked into the jail and get our officers back onto the street. So we've had that partnership since the 1980s. Been through several names, so those are a real comprehensive unit that really serve our public safety communities very, very well. A couple of newer facilities that we have are C3 at 356, where that has helped from a mental health perspective. It's where we're taking more clients, keeping them out of the ER, getting our officers back on the on the street and dealing with a very challenging topic for our community, which are our mental health and substance abuse issues. And all of you remember last year when we opened the Family Justice Center dealing with domestic violence. I think we've had a very successful first few months. You hate that you need the service, but it's been there and it's worked in a very comprehensive and collective way. We also work on economic development together, have for a number of years. We have a partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, do a lot of recruiting for new and expansion of existing businesses, have had a lot of success over the last 5 or 6 years and hope to continue having that success. It's a very cyclical business that we're in. 2 other areas I'd point out is the geographic information system. It's critical from everything from tax to public safety to just curiosity. But it'll tell you anything you need to know about development on our land, parcels, anything that you would like to look up about land in Buncombe County, City of Asheville, you're going to find on the GIS system. We do try to keep that very up to date and it's used pretty heavily by both of our organizations. Another thing we're going to talk about in a few minutes is our libraries. Operation of the libraries was transferred to the county in the early 1980s, I think 1983. But we've operated in some of the city buildings, continue to operate in some of them, East Asheville being one and Oakley being the other. I think it's been a great partnership, and it seems to have worked really well for the citizens. We are looking at some changes at East Asheville. We're going to talk about those in a few minutes. But and thanks to those of you who were there the other night. It was a good group, and we had some interesting results. But those are some of the highlights on our partnerships. If you look at this, there's so many others that cover everything from boards we both appoint to, boards that we share, a lot of different topics. And I would say, and Gary and I try to meet at least once a month to talk about the things that we are working on, should be working on, and try to figure where we need to go from month to month on these things. Would you like to?
I would just add that we keep a regular contact on a monthly basis, and we share information. The examples that she went through, you see there's rotating leadership, there's rotating teamwork, and there's in some cases, we understand you're doing the criminal justice system. We really appreciate it. The economy of scale there. It doesn't make sense for us to do it. It doesn't make sense for municipalities in the county to have landfills. It's better to have one solid waste plan, and where we can team up and do a more effective job, for example, in law enforcement, emergency response. That's what we do. And most of the time it doesn't even involve us.
That's great.
Our teams work on it. We have great folks that work behind the scenes. And I think a lot of times it's not, thanks for this opportunity because we partner in so many ways to serve the community seamlessly, oftentimes without people knowing it's happening. And that's our job.
It is our job. And I can tell you some of my proudest moments, not that you want people to have difficulties in life, but when you go out to a scene and you know, whether it's APD, fire department, sheriff, EMS, they're all on the scene together. You don't know who works for what agency, but you know they're all working for the citizens they're responding to. It makes me very proud.
Well, the only other thing I would add is that we know who we work for. We appreciate your guidance and leadership. When it comes down to it, when our folks respond to mutual aid, they're just trying to take care of the people that live in this community. And our folks respond outside the city limit lines. They don't care if it's a non-city resident or not. They're just doing the best they can to make people safe and provide the best services they can regardless of what the address is.
So we're happy to answer any questions you have about any of the partnerships that you've reviewed on this, or if you have any later or want to ask us about it, we're happy to answer those too. And we expect by the time we're back, the list will grow.
Yeah, matter of fact, there are a couple of things we're working on in addition to what the mayor mentioned, and we're excited about those opportunities.
Great, thanks. Do any council members or commissioners have any initial questions about any of the ongoing partnerships?
Not ongoing, and this is certainly a bigger topic for today, but I would like to put out there the horrible opiate problem that we're facing. And I'd like to put out there if the city and the county could join forces together and work on this collaboratively, I think it would send a great message to the citizens. So if we can explore that later.
I think it's a great point, Ellen. We just had we had a great presentation. It wasn't great, it was kind of a horror show, frankly. But we had a great group from our staff in Health and Human Resources, and Mission Hospital, and Maytag, and others who have expertise on the topic, the Sheriff's Department, the Police Department, at one of our last meetings about the opioid addiction crisis in our community, which is also a national crisis, and it's very sobering and very alarming. So I think we are asking ourselves, what can we do to make a positive difference? And we definitely don't have all the answers yet, but we feel like it's really important to start figuring out how we can make a contribution. So I think that's a great point, Ellen, and we would definitely welcome that. I don't think we are not going to be the levels of government or that necessarily are in the driver's seat on solving these problems, but there's ways that we can work together to make a difference. That would be great.
If I could just add, that's correct. The complex problem, the solutions need work. But the framework is there. We have a drug trafficking partnership. It does receive federal funds. And in fact, next Tuesday, the City Council will be acting to continue that partnership by the acceptance of those grant dollars. And the framework by which we work together to address the drug trafficking. This is a significant issue in our community because this is a destination for further distribution in the country. And so when we talk about trafficking, we're talking about organized crime. And most definitely, just as with other forms of drug distribution, the opiates deserve that same level of our full cooperation. Thanks.
Great. Any other questions or comments at this time? If not, I think we're going to move on and also have some updates on some of the capital projects that both organizations are. So we're going to have Kathy Ball, the Assistant City Manager, and then John Creighton from the county to talk about different capital projects that each organization is involved in or has on the planning horizon coming up. Hey, Kathy.
Good afternoon. How are you doing? Thank you for the introduction. Members of the Buncombe County Chair, Commissioners, and members of the City Council. Again, my name is Kathy Ball. I'm the Assistant City Manager for the City of Asheville. We have Paul Featherston, who is also an Assistant City Manager for the City of Asheville, in the back, so he's going to be giving me moral support during the presentation. We do want to, with respect to your time, we want to kind of highlight, we felt like it was important to highlight some of the capital improvements that are happening in our community. And some of these, I'll point out, are happening together with Buncombe County and the City of Asheville. So, and I would reiterate too that I meet with John, I'm fortunate enough to meet with John on a regular basis, and we're able to kind of work through problems. So I'm really pleased with the relationship that we have from my perspective. So I'm not going to go through these in full detail. You have a presentation in front of you. I'm going to move so that I'm not in your way. So when looking at our capital improvement plan, that's typically over a 5-year period, and we break those down into 6 different categories that we hope the community can connect with in terms of affordable housing, public safety, multimodal transportation, economic development, quality of life, and maintenance. So you get a perspective on how much money in each of those categories that the city is spending. And then just to highlight some of those projects, the one that I mentioned that Buncombe County and the City of Asheville are working on is the Eagle Market Street project. Below you is the City of Asheville's park maintenance property that we're in the process of relocating and converting to affordable housing. Public safety, I think public safety was mentioned as a big partnership between the city and the county. One of the city's big initiatives is to add a fire station in the north area and be able to provide the equipment and the people necessary to operate that fire station. So as we move through, again, I'm not going to talk about all these multimodal. We have really focused a lot over the past 3 and 4 years on making sure that our community is able to be accessed by anybody who chooses to use any mode of transportation. So we have been able to get leverage state funds to be able to do that, a significant amount of state funds, as well as even federal funds to be able to do that. One of the highlights that we are in the process of working on is the River Arcs Transportation District improvements. And those include greenways, they include refurbishing the 14 Riverside building that used to be an old gas plant, and that building will be renovated in May of this year. And then you see some examples of the greenway. The Carrier Park renovations have been completed, so those bathrooms are now open and in much better condition. The velodrome is also one of the projects that is in the design phase and will begin construction soon.
You said it was completed, but that portion was completed.
That portion. Yes, thank you, Mayor. And then as we move into maintenance, some of this is deferred maintenance on buildings, as well as doing our resurfacing and sidewalk maintenance included. So looking forward, we have a couple of initiatives looking forward. We were awarded a grant to be able to move forward on the South Slope and doing feasibility and design work on South Lexington Street, as well as Cox Avenue, to make those streets more walkable and more pedestrian friendly. I'm sure that every one of you all know that area is just really booming, and there's a lot of activity happening down there, and we need our infrastructure to be able to keep up with that. So we're moving ahead on the planning for that. We also are working diligently on I-26. That's probably another great relationship between the city and the county is on I-26, as well as South Charlotte Street. Bond projects, we just got out of a city council work session and talking about this, but just to reiterate, we are, the voters have approved spending $74 million in 3 different categories. The first being transportation, second Parks and Rec, and then thirdly affordable housing. And to speak a little bit to what those projects include, the transportation includes road resurfacing, it includes traffic safety, bus shelters, and additional greenways. Our park projects are projects that have already been identified in the master plan as priorities for our community, but specifically being able to move those projects into construction phase are the projects, the major projects that are included in the bond. And then we have affordable housing. So unfortunately, we're making some lists that we're not so proud of, which is one of the fastest communities to gentrify. And so we're working on being able to provide affordable housing, and I think that was discussed earlier as a potential partnership. So being able to move those efforts forward. We have a new website coming on. We are working hard on making sure we're pushing out communications. And the new website comes on Friday the 10th. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, but again, I want to be respectful of your time.
John?
Just kind of want to recap a couple things. I'm John Creighton, Assistant County Manager. As everybody's aware, the Isaac Dixon School came online the first of the school year. Very successful project. I think it's really interesting to see that this is the only school in North America that actually has a dinosaur in the lobby. So I think that's really says a lot for it. The middle school, if you've been down Southbridge Broad lately, is moving along. In fact, the old Southbridge Broad Middle School is gone. We've had a little problems with some bad soil on the site, which is very common downtown. We had the same thing with Isaac Dixon. But now you can see the entrance road is taking shape. The pouring sidewalks, putting in curbing. It won't be long before the park area will start taking shape. And we expect late spring, very early summer, that project will be completed. We've completed the 50-yard indoor shooting range down at the training facility. Very state-of-the-art facility. City staff has been down. They've gone through orientation, so they're set up and ready to start using it. We've had the sheriff, a lot of the sheriff deputies have come down. State Highway Patrol have been using it. We've already, I heard today that they've already shot about 14,000 rounds so far. And we're expecting about 500,000 rounds to go through the thing a year. It's an incredible facility. If you're ever down in Woodfin, please stop in and take a look at it. It's a real impressive site. We've been down Cox Avenue lately. We're proceeding along. We're on schedule, on budget. The new Human Services addition parking deck we're putting the siding on it. I'd say this time next year that we'll have 650 new parking spaces available, especially in the evening and on weekends. And we'll have some additional parking. We'll just have to see how that goes during the day. But I think that will really be a great addition to the South Slope area. And then last is Asheville High. We've got a $25 million budget. We expect to let a contract and have contractors on the job late April, 1st of May. We'll start out by, we've got to retuck and point all the brick in the building, replace the roof. That in itself is a 3-year project, just to do the mortar and the bricks. We'll proceed mid-summer with the next phase, and then by the end of the year have another phase going. But it's a mammoth project. Be a lot going on the campus over there. So like I said, we've got a construction firm that's already working with us. Like I say, we'll see some roof action come May, and scaffolding the building. So we've been working with the city school superintendent to kind of get that going, and it's going to be a big job in that. So that's our capital projects. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And I'll ask Josh O'Connor to come up and talk about greenways.
I'm Josh O'Connor, the manager of Buncombe County Recreation Services, and I just wanted to go over our approach to greenways for Buncombe County really briefly. Our Greenways Master Plan was adopted by the Buncombe County Board of Commissioners in September 2012. At that time, there was not a designated funding source, so we are leveraging funding from a variety of sources, including federal, state, local, nonprofit, and corporate donors. We're finding the best thing to help us move specific segments of Greenway forward are those segments of greenways that are supported by communities and local neighborhoods. The plan encompasses a total of 102 miles of corridor throughout Buncombe County. That includes the corridors that are within the City of Asheville's Greenway Master Plans, as well as the other municipalities that have Greenways Master Plans to date. To date, our current projects have been the construction of the Lake Julian Park Extension, which is kind of the terminus of our greenway system at Lake Julian. It's 0.4 miles of paved trail. We've completed feasibility studies for the US 70 Swananoa River Greenway, the French Broad River Greenway that goes along Highway 251, also known as Riverside Drive. And then we've done 2 separate studies that take us from the existing French Broad River Park Greenway or the Hominy Creek Greenway all the way out to Lake Julian, parallel to 191. Currently, we're working with the town of Woodfin for preliminary engineering of the 251 Greenway along Riverside Drive, and working with the kind of putting all their Greenway bond projects together. We also just signed a contract to take that system from the connection at Broadway, right there at the Reed Creek Greenway, all the way to Hill Street, which will connect into the work that the city's doing along Riverside Drive and River Arts District. So with our funding that we have dedicated At this point, we have $660,000 that's not on this list that was slated toward the 251 design. And then we have an additional $1.7 million that's been slated for various stages of greenway design. Each of these moves us closer to construction, and it's a necessary step for us to be able to get solid cost estimates for where we're going with construction, and so we don't get in over our heads. So out of the total funding for greenways that we've had to date, we pulled down about $2.36 million at a county cost of $472,000. So we're working with approximately an 80% federal match, 20% county match. In terms of how we're prioritizing the Greenway Master Plan, what we tried to do is connect into the work that the town of Weaverville has done with their greenway that will run along Reeves Creek and create one continuous stretch of corridor that will go through the River Arts District all the way to Lake Julian. So that's how we've slated the funding, and that's how we've prioritized the corridors of greenways that we're currently working on. All told, that's a 15 to 20 mile corridor of continuous greenways that will take us from north to south in the county. And parsing this out a little bit more, the sections of the Greenway Master Plan, we're working on that connection to the existing the existing Reed Creek Greenway. So everything you see on the blue line traveling north, that's showing how much segment that'll add into the city's section. And then the same thing with the existing French Broad River Greenway, which is the red circle there at the top at the WNC Farmers Market. We'll be connecting that system all the way down to Lake Julian with an additional 8 miles of corridor. That segment also allows us to make a connection to Inca and Candler areas and connect the Buncombe County Sports Park, the ball fields that are about to be under construction along that way. So we're leveraging the existing efforts that have been put into the city's greenway system and trying to expand that as much as possible, because the way we view greenways is as a transportation network, and connectivity is one of our major areas of focus at the moment. We recently partnered with some efforts across the state on the Fonta Flora State Trail System. This will allow us to access additional funding through the State Trails Program, and it creates a continuous trail from Morganton all the way to Asheville. It'll be various surfaces as it's traveling along that corridor, but it aligns with the county's current greenway plan along US 70. So that's an effort that will create several miles of recreational trails that aren't available today. One of the biggest issues that we are seeing with greenways is the cost of construction. That remains our biggest bottleneck. From taking the greenways from a master plan to construction, we've had to spend a lot of time going and developing the engineering for that. And as we're getting online and getting that engineering done, we're finding greenway cost of about $1.2 million a mile, depending on the terrain that we're working with. And trying to make that investment effectively, we're continuing to look for federal and state grant programs that allow us to maximize taxpayer investment. What we've also done in some of our feasibility planning that's allowed us to save a little bit of cost is, instead of selecting one route when we go through feasibility, we're selecting routes and documenting the conditions at the time. This has allowed us to have a slated approach, but it also allows us to be very nimble. If we have a large landowner that changes their mind and suddenly they want a greenway through their property, or if something changes in the transportation system, we're documenting all that during the initial feasibility study. So if we do realize any of those changes, we don't have to go back and redo the feasibility study. We have all that documented. So basically we're doing multiple design alternatives at the same time at a reduced cost. So with that, I can answer any questions that y'all have. Thank you.
No. Thank you. So I know we haven't been, TDA has not been receptive to Buncombe County Greenways. Are we going to try again for TDA money for some of this?
We are, and we're currently working with the town of Woodfin on their TDA approach. They've taken the package that they have with the Woodfin Greenway system, the parks, and the Whitewater Wave, that was all wrapped up in their bond measure, and taking that to the TDA to try to leverage some funding. So we're supporting that effort because it's a pretty large segment of our Greenway system as well.
And there was a presentation made to the Chamber Subcommittee on TDA funding. Well, I guess it was made to the full Chamber Board first, right, in December, or maybe it's late November, I can't remember what it is, but about the project kind of from River Arts District going north and into Woodfin. And I think the feedback was very, very positive about that, and they have now referred that request to their tourism product subcommittee for consideration. So it's not gone through the whole process yet, but the initial feedback, I think, was extremely supportive. So.
And that's good to hear, because in the past, county efforts have not been very supported by TDA. So we think to change that dynamic.
One of our limits there has been the fact that we didn't have that many segments of Greenway. It's designed all the way to a design and engineering phase. So now that we've got some funding for that, that makes us a little bit more competitive for that ask.
That's great.
One of the things that we're looking at in regards to housing is we have a land use incentive grant right now, so folks who are willing to include affordable housing on some of our major corridors can receive tax rebates as a result. And we're looking at, we're exploring the possibility of having that also along Greenway corridors, because we know that in other cities that include this, there tends to be a lot of development around those greenways as they happen. So kind of looking further into the future, if we can, with a tax incentive, help to have some of that affordability, it's something that we're hoping about.
Great.
Josh, do we have numbers on how much a swamp rabbit is per mile?
The Swamp Rabbit costs about $250,000 per mile. One of the reductions that they realized in cost is they didn't have to go in and do much grading and compaction since they built over an existing rail bed. And they were actually able to do some cost recovery with scrapping the rails at a pretty opportune time in the metal market.
Josh, when you talk about the cost, the $1.2 million per mile, does that include all of the front work, the feasibility, the engineering, or is that just the cost of construction?
That's just the cost of construction, and that's absent land acquisition. So when we look at land acquisition, particularly in an area like South Asheville, where real estate prices are a little bit more competitive, that does get inflated. A lot of the cost with the terrain that we're dealing with is not necessarily in the greenway itself, it's in the grading and the retaining walls and the handrail systems that are required in order for us to make those greenway systems compatible with ADA. And that's been a major focus for us, is making sure we don't build anything that's not ADA compatible, which we're bound to because we've received federal funding.
In other words, you're talking about when I buy some land.
Or some easements across some land.
What if they don't want to give you the easement?
Well, our instructions from the commissioners has been not to use eminent domain. So we've, when we do the feasibility and design, we try to limit landowner interference, and we try to communicate with landowners at that point about their intent as to whether they will allow an easement or not. And if they're clear at that point that they don't want to allow the easement, then we go ahead and handle that early on in the design phase before we invest any money in engineering.
Awesome, thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
Do people have any other questions about the previous presentations as well, on the other capital projects or the bond funding the city has approved and how those programs can be moved forward?
Well, in relation to the bond or in the Greenway?
Both.
Well, the land use incentive grant has gone through a few different versions while we've been trying to figure out how to get it right. Brownie was one of the original folks who got that started once upon a time. But the way it's set up now is that if you want to say you want to build something on Patton Avenue, you want to build 200 apartments. If you're willing to make 40 of those affordable to people at 80% of area median income or below, then you receive an increased density bonus in regards to zoning. And you can also qualify for tax rebates. That would be a portion of the taxes that we pay would come back to the builder because we know it's a community need. We know that the housing is needed, and if there's builders who are willing to put their good foot forward and help make that happen, we want to partner with them.
Any other questions? If not, I've got several other kind of joint initiatives that we're working on together. We wanted to move on. And the first one of those is the Energy Innovation Task Force. And that task force is a joint creation of Duke Energy and the city and the county. And Jason Walls, who is here, and Julie Mayfield and myself are the co-chairs of that effort. And so I'm going to turn it over to Julie to make a few remarks, and then I'll say a couple things, and Jason as well, and then we're going to largely turn this presentation about the update on this over to our friends from the Rocky Mountain Institute, who is a key partner in this effort. So, Julie.
Thanks. So the last time all of you probably heard about this was probably last April, when each body approved a resolution creating this Energy Innovation Task Force. So it's been a while since you've heard about it, so I'm just going to remind you sort of how we got there and what we're doing. So this effort grows out of several things. It grows out of the city's longtime commitment to sustainability and carbon footprint reduction and wanting to partner with Duke on a number of initiatives. It comes out of the county's do you call it a sustainability plan or a carbon reduction plan? Whatever that you adopted in
carbon reduction
plan that adopted in 2015. And so there were, those things were sort of happening. And then in 2015, Duke announced its plans to retire the coal plant, and that then sort of kicked off the conversations about, well, what does it get replaced with? And Duke eventually announced that they were going to replace it with 2 small natural gas units. And then they were also saw the need to build a 3rd unit in the early 2020s. So those first 2 units are scheduled to come online in 2020 and 2019, 2020, and this 3rd would be needed in the early 2020s because of our growing demand for energy, growing population, growing demand for energy. Well, importantly, in that announcement, in response to community, I think, pressure and discussions and conversations about working together more to for this community to really have a role in determining our energy future, Duke announced and welcomed this partnership between the city and the county and Duke to try to avoid or delay the construction of that 3rd unit that is scheduled still for the early 2020s. And so this whole effort by the Energy Innovation Task Force is to come up with a plan that will really do 2 things, and you'll hear more about this. It's a dual goal of both reducing the overall energy usage here in Asheville and Buncombe County, but particularly reducing our peak usage of energy on cold winter mornings. That 3rd unit is really was proposed in response to the need for additional peak energy on very cold days. And so it's a 2-pronged effort, and what we eventually hope to bring back to you in really just a few months is a plan, kind of the initial 2-year plan for how we're gonna do that. This is a long-term effort. It's not something that we're gonna do in 2 years and check off and say we're done. But if we want to continue moving this region to clean energy, this is the first step. And several people will probably say this, but I just want to lay it out here. This is a nationally unique partnership. This partnership between the city and the county of Duke. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the country. In no other place are municipalities working with a regulated monopoly like Duke Energy. So this has attracted national attention. Eyes are on us about how successful we might be, and we're just very excited to be this test case. So.
Great, thanks, Julie. I would just like to add that I think that this is such an exciting initiative. Our constituents want us to find strategies to provide key services at a lower cost to taxpayers, or in this case, taxpayers are also ratepayers. And they also want us to find strategies to help protect our environment and move towards a more sustainable future. And this is just an opportunity to make a big impact in a positive way on both of those key areas. This peaker plant that if it were constructed would sit idle. I mean, this would cost probably over $150 million that our constituents would pay for. And it will sit idle 95% of the days of the year. And even on the days it's used, it would probably be used for a limited number of hours just during this very cold mornings. So a very expensive investment that would be utilized very infrequently. But Duke must have reliable electricity. That's a mandate that they have by the federal regulatory authorities. So if we can find a way to meet that reliability in a way that's much cheaper for our constituents, but also helping to advance new clean energy infrastructure in the community, it's just a big win-win for our local economy and ratepayers and our environment. And the other thing I'm saying is that we've got a great group of citizens who are actively involved in this effort, ranging from the Sierra Club to Mission Hospital to New Belgium to the Chamber of Commerce, representing local business community, environmental community, and other key institutions. And people have been working really hard on this since the City Council and County Commission created this group a little bit less than a year ago. So we're excited about it, and I would like to invite Jason Walls from Duke to also share a few words from the utility perspective.
So I'm not at the table, so I'm going to step up here because I actually haven't met all of you. So I'm Jason Walls, the district manager with Duke Energy. And I routinely tell people there's never been a more exciting time to have my job in this town than right now. And I say that because we have so many great opportunities before us. The Energy Innovation Task Force is just one of them. You know, for those of you who I've gotten to know over the years, Cecil and I have had a number of conversations around this. The leadership that this community has shown around wanting a different energy future is nothing new. But what is new is we have a real commitment and a real opportunity to be partners in this. And for those of you who have had the opportunity to work with on issues like this, or recreation planning at Lake Julian Park, or substations or other things, we want to hear. We want to be a part of the solution, but we don't want to present the solution. And so it's a really exciting time to be in my role in this community, really wrestling with, collaborating, and talking about these really important issues facing the community. So I appreciate your trust in us, in the partnership that we've created, and thank you for your patience, because we're not steering a battleship overnight, but we're getting there in very slow and methodical way, and we're going to be successful. Maybe not overnight, maybe not tomorrow, but we're going to be successful, and we're going to create a nice national model for other people to look back and be very proud of. So thank you for your trust, thank you for your patience, and thank you for your understanding.
Sure. I think Virginia's going to talk about this, but one of the very first things that we did in this effort was go out to the Rocky Mountain Institute, very intensive workshop called the eLab Accelerator. And while we were there as a team, a few of us, you'll see the picture in a minute, we met Virginia Lacey. She was the RMI staff person assigned to us to help us get started on our work.
RMI stands for
Rocky Mountain Institute, sorry. And she got very excited about what we were doing. We got very excited about Virginia, and so we realized that we were going to need some help. And Virginia and RMI were happy to come help, and we needed them. So that is the partnership that has been created. And so I introduced Virginia Lacey.
Great. You all already did a fantastic job of giving an overview, so I'm just going to go fairly quickly. Some of these things will seem, maybe we're just kind of underscoring the point. I'm Virginia Lacey, I'm a principal with Rocky Mountain Institute. We're a 501c3 nonprofit based out of Colorado. So I am coming to you from snowy Colorado, but I was actually born and raised in South Carolina, so I'm actually coming home. And actually I get to stay the weekend this weekend to be able to visit a family, so it's kind of a nice treat for me too. I wanted to just really quickly, I think you've already gotten some of the background. I'll kind of go through that a little bit about the structure and who's actually involved in the task force and all of the great volunteers. We've had a couple of key insights and then what to expect next from the task force. Both Brownie and Julie mentioned that last year there was a joint resolution that came out of from the county and the city and was worked out with Duke to establish the task force with two goals. They're, for all intents and purposes, long-term and short-term. The long-term is to be able to transition this region to a cleaner, affordable, and smarter energy future. The shorter term is to avoid or delay the construction of a 190 megawatt natural gas peaker plant that Julie was saying is planned for 2023. So the objective of the task force itself, though, is to create a plan of prioritized strategies that community members, that Duke, the city, and the county can undertake collectively to be able to move us toward these goals. And of course, the short-term goal gives us a nice little deadline and a catalyst to take action. So this is the picture that Julie was referring to, I think. So we have Rocky Mountain Institute, as I mentioned, is a nonprofit, and we convene a lot with a lot of partners in the energy space. Our mission is to transform the energy system to a cleaner future. So to jumpstart the work, we also have something called eLab Accelerator that Julie also mentioned, and that is an incubator of sorts. We bring together teams from all over the country. This year we've had 60 different teams apply. We accept 12. So this team was invited to come and join us, and we work together so that they can also learn from others around the country doing similar things. And we also have faculty, national expertise that come and join as well. It's a really cool 3 or 4 days. It feels like a boot camp. I think by the end they're ready to go home, but we do put them in pretty places, so this time it was in Utah. So with that, there was an initial work plan, milestones that were generated. And so, you know, RMI got involved and is a convening partner with the total of 4 partners, Buncombe County, City of Asheville, and Duke. And there's a lot to be done. So there's a lot being spread around. But for the most part, we're sharing in doing analysis of data that Duke has been providing us, getting a better understanding of the baseline of what we have here in terms of energy usage. We're also looking at around both from the city and from the county, what have some solutions that have already been proposed in the past. There's a clean energy policy framework, came up with some great ideas. We're building on that, so there's a lot of generating of ideas to come to the table, and then RMI is helping to lead design and facilitation along with analytical support. And this is just underscoring the reason that RMI is at the table and has done some of our own fundraising to be able to help participate from our own philanthropic funders is because we actually see this as an incredible opportunity for having a national model for how a community can work effectively with the utility, especially a utility of this size, to be able to create local-based solutions that will fit the community's needs. So it's a really exciting, as Julie was saying, it really is one of a kind, really a few types of partnerships like this around, and we're sitting in one of the hotbeds for that. So just a little bit about the task force and who's involved. I won't read off all of the names, but there is a diverse task force that's comprised of business leaders and other representatives from the community to be able to engage and hear more about what some of the working groups that have been established and weigh in on some of the solutions that they are considering that could be brought to the table. So right now, I think there's a total of 16 members.
Yeah, we should mention that the chamber is missing from this list, but they, in their transition from Toby, I think Corey there has not been a meeting since Corey has been.
He's coming Thursday.
Yes.
He'll be there Thursday.
All right, we'll add the row back on.
Can I just add one other thing here too? So we've got these folks who formally serve on the task force, which is intended to meet monthly. But in addition to all of these folks, there's many other citizens who have also just contributed hours and hours and hours in addition to the folks that we have jointly, formally appointed to that board. So it's a much bigger and more active group in addition to the actual task force named members.
It's a great point, and one of the ways in which we've actually even been adapting the structure a little bit is actually thinking about this leadership group that we have of the task force, which includes work group chairs, which
for a large part are volunteers from the community that are not actually sitting on the task force and are working arm in arm with our team and with folks around the table to create some of those solutions, actually even doing modeling, et cetera. So it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I just want to underscore that point for a second, because obviously not everybody could be at this table, and there are lots of other organizations that bring an interest and expertise to this conversation. So what we decided to do was create, there were originally four working groups, and those working groups are have been open to anyone, absolutely anyone can participate in them. That was one of the ways that we wanted to really open this process up to the public. And all of the information about all of this work and all the working group meetings are on the city's website. The information is out there for people to find, and you can still get involved. It's not too late, but it was very important to us that this work be open to the public and anybody who wanted to participate.
So, I don't know if Kathy or Wanda, whoever I should ask you, so is this information available on the county website?
There's a project page on the city's website, and we'll be happy to send that out to everybody, but there is a project page that has all of the minutes to the meetings and things like that.
And I would say that's mainly because the city has been providing some, the staffing for the effort to Melissa and Kathy and others. So that's
So
what.
I don't
And
want
we'll kind of get into this a little bit more, but I mean, part of this is going to clearly kind of turn into kind of a community marketing effort. So once the strategies kind of are gelled a little bit more, there's going to be a whole lot that we can all do with our website resources and other things. So I think we're going to kind of, that's going to be coming for how we can do more.
So I won't go through all the details here, but we have created a work structure with several different tasks in which, one, we're just trying to define the problem. So we knew that there was a peaker that needed to be built, but we didn't have a clear understanding as to what was really driving that. So what is the energy use? What does it look like? Who's using it for what? So that we can start to think about that in a constructive way and start to think about cost-effective solutions that will help us to be able to mediate that issue. So that's the baseline target development. Then the other pieces around solution identification is really to be able to take all those ideas I was talking about, build from there, and start to vet some of those ideas as to thinking about cost, benefit, impact to the community, and to actually reducing peak. What do we think are some of the most powerful strategies that we could employ here to be able to actually see reduction? And then strategy integration and plan development is bringing all the pieces together. And along the way, the communications and community engagement piece. So there is a working group that is dedicated just to community engagement and has been creating different events, planning different events that would be able to help make sure to get the word out. And also we are talking to, I think, a couple of different organizations, at least one is at the top, to be able to potentially consider a branding strategy that would be able to communicate some of the challenge and the opportunity to the community at large. So just a couple of quick highlights of some of the analysis that's been undertaken by the working groups and others is, needless to say, one of the reasons for this partnership. So the area that Duke was going to build the plant, of course, is in Asheville, but serving western North Carolina, and this is the region itself. Most of those customers are in Buncombe County, as shown here. About 75% or so are in Buncombe County.
The color between residential and others indistinguishable to me. I assume other is really, really small.
It's
Residential is really, really big. Okay.
Very, 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 very small. Yeah, residential is very, very big.
Yeah, let's turn that back. That's great. Thanks.
Oh,
that's so much better.
I guess we could have started that from the beginning. I won't go into all of the technical wonkiness, but I think it's useful just to kind of get a sense. This is the Western North Carolina region's system peak occurs in the winter. The reason I point this out is actually that this is fairly unique. There are a lot of places around the country are actually summer peaking systems. And in this particular case, the time in which customers are demanding the most energy over the course of the year is actually in the winter. You guys, I'm sure, remember the polar vortex from just a few years ago. That's actually what's showing here in that red. I don't have a pointer, so just that red at the top there. But what you're seeing here is over the course of the year, from January to the end of December, what the total amount of energy, electricity usage looks like in this community. So you see these spikes. And those spikes are what drives most capacity investments from utilities. So that's what we're focusing on as a first order.
You're saying it's more normal to see summer peaking events rather than winter peaking events?
It's all about the climate, and a lot of times, especially in the southeast, as you can
See more
imagine,
summer peaking.
you'll see more summer peaking because people are running their air conditioners.
And maybe because it's cooler here in the mountains.
That's right. And so because of, and actually,
We have
People don't have air.
We have heat pumps, so we're running on electricity. Most of us have heat pumps, and that's why we get the spikes.
Well, she's saying though that normally you would see summer peak.
Heat pumps in the summer peak out too, and hot areas. So you're on the same system, except we're a lot colder than the hot areas.
it's definitely weather driven. I mean, the peaks are weather driven, and it just depends on your climate where you are, most of the time. So this is just one more. This is as wonky as I'll get. The other one and this one, I think. Yeah, almost. I think we've got one more and we're done. The peak demand in the region, this is actually over the course of a day. And so these are the peak days from the last 3 years, just showing what it looks like over the course of the day. And as you can see, especially during the polar vortex, around the time of 7, 8, 9 a.m. is when you're starting to see that rise in electricity usage. It's when people are getting up, getting out of bed, turning on their system, their heat pumps. And then additionally, again, in the 5, 6, 7, 8 time range, we see that as well. So that's just to give you all a sense as to some of the actual, what's driving it, what are some of the insights, because once we define the problem, we actually can then say, what are the solutions that can help here? What are the most cost-effective solutions? And so, sorry, does somebody have another question?
I think we're good.
Okay. 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 So this is the grand raw. So one of the things that we've identified is by 2023, 17 megawatts. So by 2023, we want to be able to reduce peak by about 17 megawatts, which is a pretty small fraction of the total amount, just to be clear. This is a doable thing. We're talking about potentially a 3-year lead time for being able to plan for that plant and be able to address and make sure reliability can be met in the region. So moving backwards, what we're really thinking about as part of the task force is what are the different range and portfolio of solutions that could help us actually meet that gap over time. And so you'll see here, of course, this is illustrative, as you see with the illustrative here. So no one can quote me on a specific number here. Is that we have turbocharged existing programs. So Duke has existing programs here in Western North Carolina, as does the city of Asheville, and others, including weatherization funding that comes through federal funding. We want to make sure that we're leveraging that to best effect. So turbocharging existing programs. There's some small tweaks and larger tweaks that can be made to actually be able to see that, that progress. This again, Duke has committed to 5 megawatts of battery storage, so that's just what I've stuck up there. As another opportunity for being able to make sure that we can meet that peak. And then new solutions, new pilots, new programs, new ways in which we can rethink this challenge and new opportunities. So the last thing for me, what to expect next. We are in the process of developing and comparing potential actions. So when I was showing where we were in the whole work plan, we're sort of in the middle there. We've got to actually do some vetting and getting to a solution set that would work based on the criteria that will meet the community's needs. As I already mentioned, engaging community members. There will be some events and you'll start to actually hear more and more things happening over the next few months. And then identifying opportunities for the city and county to leverage existing programs and turbocharge action. So really thinking about, as Julie was already saying, and Brownie, there's already been leadership from the city and county in different ways along these lines. How can we think about what's already there and the infrastructure that's already in place to be able to turbocharge?
Turbocharge just means speed picks up, it's not like a jump
Ramp it
start.
up.
I like that, okay, ramp it up.
Yeah. That's
Is that
it.
the last slide?
That's the last slide.
I'm curious if that battery estimate is conservative or, I mean, I've read that they've got big battery banks that just come online in California. So it seems like the battery solution is accelerating pretty quickly.
It could be. It's still, there's definitely, I mean, I think there's been a 70% drop in battery prices in the last decade. That said, it's still, when you put it across other strategies and compare it, it's still on the more expensive end than, for example, just implementing some more energy efficiency to be able to reduce it. So it will be a good part of the portfolio that is there. And then maybe, and this is the other thing that we've been talking about, is to be able to make sure that we have risk or opportunity baked into the strategy, so we can think about, well, if battery prices did come down quite a lot, how does that change things?
And to be clear, Duke has committed to at least 5 megawatts
Right.
of battery storage and
Yeah.
15 megawatts.
So that's a commitment, not a guess.
That's
Okay.
right.
No, that's a commitment. That was just reflected. Yeah.
Minimum, so the 5 megawatts is the floor, it's an at
Yeah.
least.
So a question for Jason and Duke Energy. I know in the past, coming out of the housing industry for 30 years, that Progress, Duke, CP&L, discounts for customers based on the energy efficiency of their new housing. Is that still in place? I remember back.
Yeah, I mean, so I would say energy efficiency programs have evolved over time as it's become, and as standards get better, then achieving even greater energy efficiency actually gets more expensive, but the company still has really a suite of about 83 different programs that customers can qualify for different things. So Joe, we still have a lot of good opportunities for customers, and I can say, in terms of the effort here, we need to figure out how we can do an even better job of connecting customers with programs that can really help them save money every month, as well as help us achieve some of the goals.
So I know as far back as in the 80s, in manufactured housing, there was a 5% discount available to customers' power bill based on the insulation in their home. So, there's nothing like, and I see that's being, I don't know if that's part of the equation or not, but that's just for a point of information, wondering what, so the answer is you've got multiple discounts available to customers based on the efficiency of the house.
To me, one of the beautiful things about this effort is this is an all of the above strategy. There's not one thing that's going to get us to where we want to go. It's an all of the above strategy, but it has to be, we need to have a focus on helping customers in a number of ways. And one of those, let's face it, costs for everything, whether it's, water or sewer or anything, the price keeps going up. And so, a lot of those questions are, so what can we do in order to help customers offset rising costs in their lives? Because we want to make sure that we can deliver those to our customers.
And I think, don't we have some ongoing things as far, working with Health and Human Services as far as making more homes energy efficient for lower income?
Yeah, one of the, as we've all kind of started thinking about this challenge and what to do, and trying to kind of leverage Duke's existing resource commitment to these kind of programs, how do we promote those better? We started thinking too about the different things the county's already involved in, and one of the things that the county is involved in administering, and we also put some of our own dollars directly into it, is heating and mostly heating assistance for low-income families in Buncombe County. Also some cooling assistance, but most of it's heating in this part of the country. And we spend about $2 million of taxpayer money in Buncombe County every year, providing direct, just paying the bills for low-income families, mostly during these really cold winter months, when they live in poorly insulated homes and they have really high bills and they just can't, their power's gonna get turned off, and we help them out. So it's, doing some of the things we're gonna wanna do is gonna require some investments, but we're already making investments. We're already spending a lot of taxpayer money on kind of inefficient buildings. So if we can do things to help folks insulate their homes and businesses, then we really believe in the long run we're gonna come up with some strategies that have clear environmental benefits, but also are just gonna be lower cost strategies to keep people warm and safe in their homes and buildings.
Yeah, I think that's a key thing, that this isn't just about the environmental benefit, it's not just about bringing costs down, it's really about making people's lives better. I mean, if you've ever been in a house in the winter that is not well insulated, you know how miserable that is. And if a lot of people don't have the resources on their own to fix it, nor do they at this point have the capacity to navigate, the Duke Energy website, assuming they even have internet, to get to the programs that they need. And so really what we're trying to do is package a whole set of programs and initiatives together under this sort of new branding that Brownie mentioned. So it's not just going to be Duke saying, come sign up for our program. It'll be a bigger community effort encouraging people to take advantage of these programs and most importantly, helping them do that. So we're not just saying to people, well, these programs are out there, go find them. There'll be a very intentional effort to make it easier for people to find out what's available to them and to help them get to those resources.
I got a good idea. Talking about saving energy. For the city, you gotta have windows and everything. You shoot a window, it's 40 degrees, you shoot a wall, it can be 80 degrees. So we're losing a lot of energy by what the city's forcing the county and everybody else for us putting windows in. So they need to change the rules to help. That's what I see. When you look, it's full of windows. Windows don't insulate. Windows, like you take it in, you shoot it, if it's 40 degrees, it's putting cold in. That building across the road there is the hardest thing in the world to try to figure out how to heat. Full of windows. It's supposed to be one of the elite deals. It's not working, so they need to back off their rules, but they build buildings. They need walls, they need doors, they need windows, they need windows.
Mike, I think we could discuss it further, but.
That's part of this.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into a big debate here, but part of what we're talking about here is building code requirement, which is a state requirement, so.
No, it's not state that have to have windows and all of the stuff, no, it's not. That's your.
Okay, well, we can
It's
parse.
not in the county, so it's got to be the city.
So
So it saves some energy.
Yeah, so I was going to just say to kind of tie into Mike's point is that I think that the construction requirements county and city, as we move towards trying to save and trying to help everybody in the county with their energy consumption and their bills, which is what this is going to do, that part of it would be to look at, our building requirements and, how that is. When you do look out, you see, to his point, you see a lot of windows in our buildings. Well, a lot of people don't equate that to energy savings. It may be, but I think as we move forward, we can look at all of that because we're going to want to save energy wherever we can. I think where it makes sense, we should look at all of this.
Great. Other questions, observations, thoughts about the Energy Innovation Task Force?
Thank you for coming all the way to.
My pleasure.
You want to set up, so what you're going to see next from us? Do you want to?
I want to say something before you move on because it just came to mind. There are people in Buncombe County that are paying more for their power bill than they are for their rent. And that can be fixed. And it can be fixed with new construction. It can be fixed with retrofitting some old construction. It can be fixed with with site-built construction. It can be fixed with factory-built construction. And we should take all those things together because there is I know that, and I'll just say this, that many times in the past, when I was with a previous employer that I had, someone could purchase a new home, and their payment on a new home would be less than the power bill on the old home, but that we were trying to pull them up, out and up. So I think there's parts of this that could be very beneficial if we reach those. We've got to reach those people that their power bills are more than there's quite a few.
I think that's going to be the first target.
So I guess I would just say, in terms of the process moving forward, we are working hard to kind of identify what are the best strategies, because this is the kind of thing that you go in 1,000 different directions. But we have finite resources, finite time and energy from all these different partners, so we're trying to develop a list of strategies that we think deliver the most public benefit, best return on investment. So that list is emerging, and we're not going to, and this will be kind of an iterative process. What we come up with over the next 3 months will look different a year from now, but our goal is to come up with some initial ideas to sort of launch this effort in 2017. A big part of the thinking is, how do we, again, kind of get more full utilization of these existing big programs that they've already committed to, they're already funded. We can get them better utilized by our businesses and families in our community. But it's going to take all of us. I think the city's going to have to be a partner. The county's going to have to be a partner. We're going to both have roles to play in terms of investments that we're going to need to make this campaign successful. And it's going to really take the full community. I mean, part of the idea of building this real diverse set of stakeholders on our task force is that once we have the strategies, we're going to be asking all of them to go back to their communities and their constituencies and help build excitement and encouragement from different parts of the business community and neighborhoods throughout the county to get actively involved. So this is going to be a real community-based campaign that's going to be getting started. So we're excited about it, and we look forward to making some initial recommendations to our joint local governments over the next few months.
Yeah, I mean, I think our hope is to have something to bring to the table during the budget discussion conversations so that we don't lose a year of implementation. Great.
Any other questions for now? Great. Virginia from Rocky Mountain Institute, who is with us. I also wanted to acknowledge Sam Rourke and Brad Rouse, who are here and have been leaders on the task force efforts as well. So thank you all for what you're doing, and I think we're good on this. So Dr. Wanda Green, I think we want to ask you to come back up and give us an update on the planning for the East Asheville Library project.
Well, thank you very much. And thanks to those of you who've been to East Asheville. This is one of the facilities that the city owns, and the county operates the program with the library. A little less than 3,000 square feet in this library, but pretty high circulation. A very interesting community, a very involved community, and helping determine what they'd like to see in a new library. We've had several community meetings focused on what do you want in a library. I mean, that's our first focus, so we can figure out if you want 4 different conference rooms, if you want how many stacks, and how you want things designed. We've been very, very focused on that portion of it. Met there last Thursday night, and we took the feedback from what we had at the original meeting, and we basically made puzzle pieces. Went back to them and said, okay, now here are all the puzzle pieces that you told us you wanted, and now we'd like for you to put that together in some design. And I think one of the most interesting things at the end of the evening is there was a lot of similarity in the designs that came out of each of the individual tables. If I were to describe what they really want is space, a lot more space than they have. This is a mid-1960s Tony Moore building. It's not attached to your fire station, but it's so close you have to ask the question whether or not it's attached. So what we plan to do now is actually have our architect draw some of these alternatives so we can go back to the community in March. And at that point in time, the city's been great to work with us on what are some of the regulations we need to deal with. There's the fire station And then next to it is the library, and they're at least on one end, the library's on the other. A limited parking area in a park, and y'all have been very good at working with us to say, what might we be able to do with that park? There are many people in the library who are very interested in continuing to have a park. When you meet at night, you don't always get a full representation of the community, so Gigi Francis, and I saw her come in, I see her in the back here. She and Alexa are putting together a survey so that for the next 60 days, or as soon as the survey is ready, we can seek additional input from the users of the library, so we make sure that we get input from everyone. And at that point in time, we will go back to the community and certainly will need your input on the process to determine, can we site the facility that's being requested on the existing property? That's always been a question we've had to raise. Will this go here, or do we need to look for an alternate site for it? It's a fairly complicated neighborhood to find sites. We found a few, not necessarily for sale, some are for sale, so we are trying to keep an inventory of those as we go through the process. Interestingly enough, it's a single-story facility now, and most of the plans came back with a two-story facility. That is a couple of issues for us. It's additional staffing as far as that goes. But it did really represent well what the people were telling us they wanted. They did a really good job of putting that together. So next steps will be to get those drawings completed, get them back out to the community sometime in March. Our timeline is we'd like to have a drawing, a plan that everybody can agree on, or to a great extent agree on. Yeah.
Consensus. Consensus.
A girl can dream. And then determine if it can go on this existing site, and if not, where would we locate this library? We have it in our 2019 capital plan, and we would like to be ready to actually hit the ground and do some construction starting in July of 2018. The library's been on the capital plan for a long period of time. It's a tight little facility. We visited it Thursday night. We expect that to, in about 18 months from the time we start having the facility for it. Happy to answer any questions you have. It's a very, very active community.
The reason for the 2 floors, from what I got, was the library part and then the recreation center.
There is everybody wanted more space, and one room that's big enough for a recreation center, community room, really. And the only way that, when they were putting the pieces together, that really was 2 levels.
There was also some sense of wanting to have not just one big room, but one big room and maybe another smaller room upstairs that might hold 20 people instead of 80 people.
There's a real desire to have an adult space that's distant from a children's space, so that everybody can have a peaceful experience in the library, or a fun experience, depending on which you are. It does have a really nice playground equipment. The city's done a really good job with playground equipment on the park next to it, and we have a lot of homeschoolers who use the library, so that's important to them. And so just trying to configure something on the site will be a challenge for Carol Bay, our architect. She's looking at that and coming back with something. Any questions about the facility? Several of you were there. And we really do appreciate it. One of the questions we've been asked many times is, are the city and the county really in this together? And I think they're very clear that we're in this together.
So I went a few years ago.
Nothing's changed.
I heard. And it's space challenged. So you're either up or out. I don't know, it's very difficult. Just, yeah, it's very difficult.
It is, and that's part of the thing we wanted the community to understand. You can't just sit down and pack the library on that spot. So that's a challenge.
Well, and the other thing that impressed me about the site visit, so, I looked at the GIS and saw the site, but when you're there on the ground, you can appreciate how many beautiful old trees are there. And so that's kind of a factor in terms of the footprint. I think there's a lot to balance there.
I agree with that, and I think there are a lot of advantages to the current location. It's right in the heart of those kind of neighborhoods in that area. So close for a lot of folks who are users. It's right on the transit route. There is this park and recreational opportunities so parents can do stuff and kids are playing. I mean, it's really a nice site, but it just is very tight. So I think trying to determine whether we can make that site work or if we need to go find somewhere else is kind of the next key question we're going to need to focus on. So as Dr. Green said, we're going to have another community forum in the next 30 to 60 days, and the architect will be able to show some pretty, pretty specific ideas around what this facility might look like based on the feedback that we've now collected, including kind of how the building and the parking would work on the parcel. So I'd really encourage as many folks from both City Council and County Commission to go to that, because I think it'll really give us all a chance, as well as the community, to really react to, yeah, this seems like maybe this really could work on this site, or gosh, with everything that the community wants, maybe there's just not enough real estate here. So, and since the county is going to fund this project, but if we do stay there, we are on the city's land. We really want to make sure that whatever these ideas that are coming up have the full support of the city council if we are going to be on that location. So we'd love to have everyone's thoughts at that next meeting.
Could part of it go over the fire station? Just throw some I-beams up there and go up?
One group did talk about going out, cantilevering over the parking lot as a way to try to get more space. But that's another idea.
There may be, part of what we've heard is, the fire station, if it is updated in the future, we don't know what that update might look like. So I think they want us to kind of stay behind kind of the invisible, line between the two and kind of do whatever you want over on this side, but don't encroach on this side because it might start restricting future updates to the fire station.
Unless you guys want to rebuild our fire
We're not building a new fire station.
No, that seems like a good idea.
One idea that was really interesting was to put residential, so if it's a two-story building with library and community centers, to put residential on a third story. And apparently there are some libraries around the country that are doing this, but it could be, again, a great opportunity for a joint project around affordable housing, small units right there on a bus line. It could be really nice. And then it would keep, there would be people there all the time.
You can't add a story at each meeting. Four-story and
roof deck. I just heard Joe propose a roof deck.
I tell you, there were several things that came to my attention. I worked out there years ago when I managed the First Union branch there. But in going back, talking to people, and I've been back some during the day, it's really surprising. It surprised me is how much it's used. And then on the other hand, I didn't know we had cut down on the space of the library by what was the community room. We had rented it to a nonprofit. Oh.
That was it. Yeah, we're gonna fix it.
Oh, good. Good. That's just concerned about it.
This library does have 4 times circulation, so it's absolutely busy.
Yeah, it's busy.
And all the plans, I would say, do indicate that we'll have to take the existing structure down.
She's got us on notice.
Save the rocks.
So it's a bookmobile for a year while the other one's being built?
Well, it's an alternate, you'll have to go to alternate libraries. That question was asked, and there's not really a way to keep it open while we're tearing it down. So we did that pack, though we've done that in other libraries. They come back.
I think the police pretty close with, part of it. Instead of just having sort of mega libraries, like some communities do, having kind of these smaller neighborhood type libraries throughout the community is nice, because when one is offline, there are usually some other ones not too far away.
And having the meeting space was critical to everybody at the previous meeting, and there wasn't any question that space was a big issue there. Any questions about it? Process will continue, but I hope that by budget time we have a pretty solid plan in place. Thank you.
Thank you. For today, I'm going to just give you an update about the African American Heritage Commission. And just so everyone has kind of a base level understanding, the It is the City of Asheville and Buncombe County African American Heritage Commission, and we co-founded this group back in 2014 through a joint resolution. And both bodies appoint members to the commission. And the purpose of the commission is to recognize African American history in Buncombe County, Asheville and Buncombe County. So just recently, our two bodies have allocated some funding to the commission so they can begin their visioning process around having a community discussion about how they would like to commemorate the contributions of the African American community to Asheville and Buncombe County. So this is some money to be able to help fund the facilitation of community conversations, to give input, to come up with a plan or proposal for some type of way to commemorate the contributions of the African American community. But to begin with, the commission is going to have a retreat coming up on February 18th on a Saturday to do some strategic planning for the commission as a whole, to sort of to help them gel up in terms of their mission and their process. And we are fortunate to have Michelle Lanier facilitate that strategic planning process. She is with the the state North Carolina African American Heritage Commission based out of Raleigh. And she's very familiar with Asheville and many of our African American leaders in the community. And I've talked to her a number of times, and she's worked with the commission to come up with a plan to come here and hold a strategic planning session. After the planning session, after they do their strategic planning session, the commission will work on a RFP to issue to hire someone to help them facilitate the visioning process around working on their proposal again, for this commemoration of the contributions of the African American community to Asheville and Buncombe County. So we just wanted to kind of make sure that's on everyone's radar, that that's happening. You all helped fund that. The proposal for that we will hope to see out of this visioning process will include suggestions for how to fund whatever it is that the commission wants to do. And we're already looking at some funding opportunities that are out there nationwide and locally that don't just include the City of Asheville and Buncombe County Commission, because there's probably some good creative ways to get something like this funded. So we'll include that.
But I'd like to give some input here. Well, let me say this. You know, my family's been in Buncombe County now for 7 generations. And what I felt that, and I was on the commission for a short term, but I got off. And one of the reasons I got off is I didn't feel that we were serious. I felt that it was more window dressing than anything else. And this commission has been going on now for what, 3 years, 2-3 years? And we're finally getting to where we're giving some money to it and having to do some serious planning. Now, I just hope, and here I'm not speaking as a commissioner, but I'm speaking as an African American who's been in the community and a taxpayer. I want to see us do something concrete with this, and not do like when we had the library where we put out, it's like we don't exist in Buncombe County. So it's time to change it and to show that we are serious about what we're doing. Because to a lot of the African American community, they don't feel that we are.
I hear you loud and clear, and I think that it's important that we're talking about heritage and honoring the past and history. I also think it's important while we're gathered here today to name something that I know is very much in conversation among county commissioners and also at the city level, which is addressing racial equity with a new level of commitment and resources and honesty in our community. So this seems sort of like an opportune time for us to sort of name the complexity of that, and also I think most folks are probably familiar with the data that Dr. Mullen has gathered on the state of Black Asheville, which has now been extended on the state of Black Buncombe. And it's really, I think, a mandate for our communities and the communities we serve to step up in new ways to address racial equity in our community, which includes honoring the history of our African-American brothers and sisters.
But in Asheville, the city, we're working on a focus on that. That's very much a theme in our strategic plan. And of course, we're working towards hiring an equity officer and doing a disparity study. And I don't know if Ellen, if you want to talk about the Joint Task Force and what's coming up.
So, as a brief highlight, since last June, when the county commission was, had Dr. Mullen present the State of Black Asheville. We, from the county manager, Health and Human Services, we said, you know, these numbers are horrible, absolutely horrible. And so from senior leadership's guidance, we have been meeting since June with various members of the community. Health and Human Services has been working for 2 years, hearing what community needs are. So on February 21st, the commission will air, hopefully, not a magic bullet, but beginning to start remedies and investing in community centers, working on some expanded access to pre-K, and then Health and Human Services come up with a model jail diversion program, working with the DA, with the sheriff, and judges, and attorneys. So, and that's one of the things, hopefully, we can have a great collaborative partnership with, because I know as we look around here, there's 3 African Americans in this room. And I know, as I also look around here, none of us in our hearts want that to happen. And when Al said invisible, that's right. And we can't, enough's enough. So I hope everybody can come to our meeting, and the mayor.
Say the date again.
February 21st, 5 o'clock. And Esther has been great almost at every meeting we've had. And we've
Because you
met
serve lunch.
Yeah, we have lunch. But we worked really, really hard, Health and Human Services. I mean, so hopefully.
So Al, I appreciate your comments, and I've had the same sense of concern about the commission and the focus, and you know, how do you empower a body to do what they want to do? And so, you know, I did reach out to Michelle Lanier after I heard her speak at another event. This is the woman with the North Carolina African American, yeah, Michelle. And she, quick and wink, said I would be glad to come and do some strategic planning with the commission and help them find their focus. So, so I think that's the first step, because just sort of throwing money at it without helping the commission have the tools to come up with what they want to do didn't seem like a good way to go. So hopefully this will help gel that up and move at least this piece along, which I think is kind of more symbolic, obviously, but important. And then, you know, fitting it into this bigger initiative, which is really more of a community-wide initiative to drill down and address these issues. So Brownie and I this morning, and Joe, we were at a meeting of the principals of the Irwin district this morning to talk about kids out there and the kinds of issues they're dealing with and where we can find opportunities to work together. Our chief Hooper was there too, so I think it's on our radar, and there's a lot of people that are eager to help. They just don't know quite how to do that. So that's what we're working on.
And you know, what I learned from our task force, we have a community that cares. And every time we invited somebody to our task force, nobody ever said no. So I know as a community, we can do far better. We have accomplished miracles with things not nearly as significant as people, and I think we can do this.
What I like about what we've done with the task force is we're getting to the root of the problem. Poor people. You know, and in this county, it doesn't matter what color they are, we've got poor people. Unfortunately, for African Americans, we have percentage-wise suffered more. But we've got poor people, and until we address the poor people, and I think we're starting to do that, we're gonna continue to have problems. And they're just gonna become more expensive as time goes on. It's either we do now, or we'll have to do a heck of a lot more down the road. But I think we've kicked the can far enough now. Now we gotta do something, because we can't afford to kick it anymore.
Alrighty.
Well, hey,
Yeah.
No, we're not. Well, hey, I really appreciate everyone getting together today. I think it's been a really substantive and interesting discussion, and I think we should do it with some regularity. And just if we want to meet with our other local bodies throughout the county, and I know you guys have neighborhood meetings throughout the city. Let's plan on not letting too much time go by before we do this again. And I know that with all these different initiatives, there are lots of people meeting all the time. So we don't all have to get together like this in order to work together and make progress. So thank you all for what you do every day. I also just want to say thanks to everyone who came to the meeting, to all the city and county staff who really run the show and make things happen every day, and all the citizens who do this work just because they care about this community. So thank you all for being here and for all that you do. Mayor, anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Thank you for coming to.
Yeah, this is your house.
All right. Anytime. All right, I think we're adjourned.